Anthony Montuori graduated last year from the School of Fine Arts here at Boston with an MFA in painting, but you may have seen him profiled in newspapers and on the web for his creations in retro video game formats. His games use the simple objectives and visual style of early 8-bit video games and allude to famous artists or mythological characters like Sisyphus to add an artsy twist into the game. Welcome to Neighborhood Network News. So tell me, Anthony, are these games or are these artworks that people can immerse themselves in?
No, they're both. They're both essentially. Yeah, they were made as art pieces, but I'm also an avid gamer, so I still want them to be games, essentially.
From what I understand, one cannot win any of these games.
Not really. No, they don't ever really get harder. They're all fairly consistent in that when you play Sisyphus, the Adventures of Sisyphus, you're just
rolling rocks up.
Yeah, you're just pushing the boulder up the hill, and the idea is that you could do this forever. You can do this until you pass out. With the Into the Void game, the idea is to play the game for as long as possible, but you can never really stop playing it unless you give up. The same with Tetris. The game never gets any harder. And really the idea is that you would stop playing when you paid off my debt, but that would take 20 years of actual play. So
now some people might say, why would I ever want to do that? But I think younger people get it to say, life, there's no hope in the future. That Sisyphus is a perfect example. He's in the underworld. The gods condemned him to always roll the rock up the hill, and then it was always going to come down, and it never ever ends. And so why do you think is that really the mindset? Is that why people like it so much? They get a kick out of their miserable future?
I think approaching a video game that takes on such a serious issue, such an existential problem, I think is a nice way to poke fun at it, and it allows, I think, people to deal with that and still have a kind of good time, more or less. I'm not sure, I don't know if it's actually fun, but yeah, I think it kind of presents it in a nice package.
Now, you're obviously too young really to have grown up with the 8-bit, is that correct? I mean,
not necessarily. No, actually, when I was 4, I think.
Oh, you were playing video games when you were 4.
Yeah,
so you're a real.
I got an NES, a Nintendo.
Oh, okay. So
for Christmas, I believe, and yeah, so I've been playing 8-bit video games, Nintendo games since I was 4 years old. Yeah.
Now, how unusual or how common is it for someone like yourself who has a formal education, you were a painter, to switch over to something that, do you make money on this, or how do people access these games? First of all, if they say, oh yes, I can see where Sisyphus was at, so let me play this game.
Well, right now, a couple of games, just a few of them, exist online and kind of reduced featured function, so like you can't really save the high scores and stuff on the online versions right now, but I have my game Sisyphus and then Rags are both playable online, and in the future I hope to have them downloadable. But as of right now, whenever I release a newer game or one of the games that isn't online, it's exhibition only, so you'd have to actually go to an exhibition that I'm showing the games in, and they come in arcade cabinets, large with buttons and everything. Yeah.
Wow, where did you acquire those from?
Well, I built them. Yeah.
Oh, you built them? Okay.
Yeah, built them out of MDF, painted them, bought joysticks and controller parts online, and just wired all that together. And they just have computers running in the back. And
so, what reaction have you been getting? A spectrum of reaction? I mean, you must get from young. Maybe I'm projecting, but the younger people are. I mean, do they get where you're coming from, or do you get comments?
Yeah, I've had all kinds of ages and generations play these games. I just recently watched a few, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9-year-olds play them for the first time, which was a really eye-opening experience. They were absolutely hooked on Tetris, but the funny thing about Tetris is that it's still essentially Tetris at the end of the day, so it is still kind of a fun game. They weren't at all interested in games like Rags or Sisyphus, which kind of present their irony in a way that I think is more tailored to, somebody who's a little older who can understand that.
Right, and when know that they're going to be in debt for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
They don't understand. Tetris really doesn't have anything to do with debt, but I mean, with the rocks, you can visualize.
And when I don't think that children really get that, so they see it as something that's frustrating, and they go, I don't want to really mess with this, so they just stop. So,
what about older people that are into the? Are they nostalgic for like
I think
the Pac-Man era?
Yeah, I think so. With my generation specifically, though, it's one of the games, the Into the Void game, became a really great kind of competition platform. Like everyone was trying to beat the high score essentially, and so that kind of distilled back down into this competitive mode where it wasn't really about the content; it was just about trying to get the high score, which I think is another great way to play with them. You can kind of ignore the content. That's fine.
Well, just tell us, our time's about to run out. What are you planning for the future? What new releases can we look to in 2013?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm about, I would say, a third of the way through a game called Code Blue, which is it's kind of a way for me to make my work experience into a video game. So take my job, my kind of day-to-day, 9-to-5 job, and turn it into a video game. I work at the ICA, and I'm a visitor assistant there. So it's a way for players to experience what it's like to be a kind of a museum educator / guard. So that I'm working on that. It's mostly finished. And then I'm doing a lot of games where I've promised friends gifts as games as gifts. So somebody does a favor for me, I make them a video game.
So people could hire you to custom make, or are you not?
Not really hire, but if they do me a favor, or somebody helps me out with something, then I found it interesting to make these very idiosyncratic, very personally tailored video games, or at least it's something I want to kind of try to do.
All right. So how can people get in contact you and try some of your games and follow what new ones are going to be released?
Well, right now the best way to do that is to go to my website for the video games, which is www.onelinergames.com, and you'll find them there.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Neighborhood Network News. Chris Lovett and the rest of the gang will be back here on Monday night. We hope you'll join us then.